It's another day in pandemic paradise, and I'm feeling fine.
All right.
Not great, but fine.
That's Sandy Frum, Northbrook Village President since 2009. Sandy is one of the faces of Northbrook, and I see her everywhere in town. Chamber of Commerce events, riding atop the fire truck during the 4th of July parade, mingling at the farmers market and Northbrook days, out and about, and of course at village board meetings. Like any good leader, Sandy is present and accessible. I got to know her even more when we met for coffee at Starbucks last year. Remember those days? I was never invested in local government because I only paid attention to major state and national headlines. But after the fall of 2016, I understood that the most important policies are created where you live and that I had agency to affect change. Since then, I've attended and even spoken at some of the meetings covering controversial topics like minimum wage, gun laws, and recreational marijuana. Sometimes things got heated. Picture the town hall meetings from Footloose and Hoosiers. But rather than arguing for or against dancing or Coach Norman Dale, people spoke in favor of and in opposition to raising the minimum wage, enacting the Cook County assault weapons ban locally, and opting in or out of adult use dispensaries. Occasionally, these meetings go past midnight, and when members of the audience have gotten ornery, Sandy's admonished them while managing control. Today's Northbrook Village Board comprise a majority of women for the first time in history. Well, that's honest, and I appreciate that.
But it's funny, I'm very much a creature of the weather. I'm affected by the sun. So the first thing, after I open up the blinds, and when it's a day like today, it's sort of like, okay, I can do it.
But this has to be, a frustrating, topsy-turvy month because April's like the worst weather month, I think, in Chicago because, we'll have sun like we are right now, and then it'll rain.
And then it'll rain. But you know what? I have managed to get out and go for a walk every day since we've been quarantined. So somehow, other than the day that I walked out and it started raining and I proceeded to walk through a puddle, every day I got out and walked. So somehow.
And that has been my pandemic pledge also. I have walked every single day. I've curtailed my regular exercise because I'm neurotic, and if I get hurt, I can't really get treated. So I figured walking is the least likely activity to hurt myself. But yeah, every day.
Every day, and I've got I do different routes depending on what kind of mood I'm in and what do I want to see in nature and that kind of stuff. So
see in nature, like people wearing masks.
Well, people,
right?
but yes, I can walk from where I live. I can walk to not Sportsman's because that's closed, but I can walk to Wood Oaks and see, walk around the field.
Yeah.
See people, but at least feel like I'm not just on the sidewalk.
Yeah, that's one of my routes. So hopefully I'll see you.
See you one of these days. Yeah.
I'll move off to the side.
There you go.
I was thinking about it. One of the last times I saw you was at the Northbrook State of the Village address a few months ago, which feels like a few years ago. Can you envision what the next one will look like?
It's funny because just thinking back, I was thinking at that point, what was my next one going to be like? It's my last one. Let's talk about what I've accomplished over the 12 years of being village president. But it's funny because this one might be a bookend. When I started, I was first elected in 2008 and took office in 2009. That's when we had the last major recession. In a way, this is the bookend of that.
Yeah.
And what is interesting, we've been here before, not here, but we've been in an economic downturn, we managed to get out. We were doing well economically. We'll be there again. I don't know, sort of probably what did lessons learned? I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Might not be a game this year though.
Between now and then,
a lot can
what's going to
happen.
happen.
A lot
Right.
can happen.
So those are the bookends. So as great a job as you've done as village president,
Well, thank you.
I'm going to say don't run for public office again, because then maybe that means we're going to be in another recession and bookended by another pandemic.
I don't think I'm that powerful, but got it.
On that first official Monday of COVID-19, we'll call it, I think it was like March 16th. I know that I don't know if I was in denial, but I went to my home office and I just told myself the way I'm going to get through this is I'm going to conduct business as usual, put my head down. And then, when I was looking at all my client projects, I realized, nope, this isn't relevant, not relevant, not relevant. And I had to pivot. How did you start and end that day?
I think, I went back to my emails. I now have a folder called coronavirus. Put emails into it. It's one of my bigger files now. And I went through it, and let me back up a second. On March 12th, we had a budget meeting for the village. Our budget is May 1st, and we have to pass the budget by then. We have to, by law, pass the budget. And on March 12th, we had a budget meeting, and it was an amazing budget. I mean, we were doing so well. We had money to spend on things. Things were going well. We had all these capital projects we were going to work on. So things were good. But we had started talking among ourselves about what's next with the coronavirus, because obviously we had heard some stuff. And then I think on March 12th, the schools closed. They made the announcement. So we knew something was coming up. And so we started just talking about it. I mean, we'd already formed, the village had already formed. I'm not on it, but staff was on it. This consortium that we have particularly with Glenview and the schools and the libraries and all of that kind of stuff. On the 16th is when as you said, they shut down everything. And then it was a matter of trying to decide, and you have to understand that the village board, and my position is we set policy. We don't actually we're not in the trenches doing anything. So in this case, staff was trying to decide, but they're all the pieces and thinking about things of.
Well, hold on. I've been to village board meetings. You guys are in the trenches. You're doing a lot of heavy.
In a different way. I mean, we're not actually out there fighting a fire or. Sure. But we're making the decisions of, are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? So the decisions began to be acting as a sounding board to a certain extent, and then getting information out to the board particularly. And I think that the first couple of days, I saw my role as staff was gearing up and trying to figure out, what did this mean? Who could work from home? How are we going to do split shifts? What are we going to do with the police? What are we going to do with the fire? How do we protect everybody? And remember, it's in the middle of right before the election, and this is when absentee voting is going on
that's right.
Or early voting is going on. So when do we close the village hall? How do we do this? How do we keep people safe? And as staff was trying to figure all of that out, my role was very much collect information and get it out to the board so that the board could stay informed and help us make those decisions. So there was a lot of time actually in the village hall at that point. And then it got to, as we rolled into things, we decided the village manager decided to close the village hall, and people were working from home, and how are we going to do shifts, particularly police and fire and public work shifts. Then it became much more of I stay home, you stay wherever you're supposed to be doing, and a lot of phone calls.
So in terms of all of that, right, and conducting village business, would you say that you're kind of settled in a groove, or are you having to adjust daily or weekly because of how fluid the situation is?
It's both. So there's a lot that's sort of just the way we're going. We're in a groove. We know what we're doing. You know, the police, the fire, you know, all those decisions have been made. The changing things are as I get people in the community, people from outside the community saying, do you need this? Do you need that? How can we work together? People are constantly coming up, and it's great. They're constantly coming up with ideas of, well, maybe the village should do this, or maybe the village should do that. Sometimes I think it's because they're sitting at home and not doing as much as they were doing.
Right.
And so they're thinking of ideas. But to a certain extent, our staff are continuing business as normal, even though they might not be in their office to do it, because we're still getting permits coming in. There's still construction going on. You know, there's still work that we have to do. And there are a lot of great ideas out there. We got one from somebody that wanted to collect food. And it was a business that actually was looking at, how can we collect food? Can we set something up with the village to collect food? And my role at that point was to say, let's not reinvent the wheel. Why don't you talk to the food pantry? You know, they're the ones that are collecting food. Why don't you work directly with them to figure out how to do something? And so there's some of that that's going on now, of trying to continue figuring out, you know, where we're going. And then I'm assuming Pritzker's going to make an announcement. I mean, schools are closed for the year,
Right.
for the school year. The first emergency declaration goes through the end of the month. This month, we're getting awfully close to then. He's going to have to make another announcement pretty soon about what's happening. So if it continues for another 2 weeks, another month, then those are the next decisions that have to be made. Right.
And what has communication with the trustees been like? You know, you're not in the same room during board meetings. What's that?
But it's worked. I mean, I think just like this, we've
Right.
all learned how to use social media, you know, the conference calling that we wouldn't be doing otherwise. And we've had 3, I think, board meetings, you know, online. And we actually had, you know, I started by talking about the budget. We've got a huge hole in our budget now. And so we spent a good 2 to 3 hours talking about the budget online. So we're managing it. It's not, some conversations, I mean, I'm old school. I like having meetings in person where I can, you know, really get down and talk to that person. This works. It's not my preference.
Right.
So, you know, but I don't know when that's going to happen, when we're going to be back in a boardroom again.
Right. And you know, we really there was no transition into this.
No.
It happened all at once, but I hope and I imagine there will be a transition out of it.
I'm assuming there will be. And I was just talking to the manager before this, and I had gotten an email from a professor from maybe Macon, Georgia, one of the universities in Georgia, that talks about, you know, regulations as you go forward. And I haven't read them yet, but it's that type of thinking of, yeah, you're right. What does it look like? Because we're all going to be in a new normal. It's not going to be tomorrow, everything's fine. We don't have to do social distancing. We don't have to wear masks. We don't have to do anything. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, I've been very pleased with how conscientious the community has been about social distancing and really obeying the pandemic rules, if you will. Yeah, there have been some nudniks who have been cavalier and you know, gotten together when they shouldn't. Those are, from my standpoint, those have been few and far between in Northbrook. How do you feel that the residents and businesses are handling everything?
I'm really pleased with the way. I think the businesses have done an amazing job. I have not seen any or really heard any concerns about our businesses and how they're dealing with it. The residents are also terrific. I mean, there's the few that we've had trouble with, and they tend to be the teenagers. the younger, or the kids coming back from school, the young adults, and
They think they're invincible, right?
It has to do with trying to maintain that distance, and particularly, what the emergency order that I had to put in place on no contact sports, because you go to the fields and it's supposed to be social distancing, and you see everybody, trainers out there working with kids in a close contact way. That seems to have calmed down.
Yeah.
As we get into May, if this continues, it's going to be harder, because people are going to want to be out there, and we'll just have to see. But I'm in general, people have responded really, really well, and been appreciative when we put orders in place. Very, very few people that are cranky.
Yeah, well, right. You've got your curmudgeons who were curmudgeons pre-pandemic, and they'll stay that way.
Yeah.
When we get that all clear, and by that I mean when it's safe to gather again, once we're in the the final stages of transitioning out of this, what do you think you'll do first?
Well, there's two things. I was thinking about that. One is a haircut. I think and I've never been happier that I don't color my hair. But I've
never been happier that I'm bald. So
yeah. So there's one, and number two is go hug my grandkids. They're the ones I really miss the most.
Yeah.
But I was on Zooming or FaceTiming, I think, with one of my 4-year-old granddaughters, and she was playing with Play-Doh, and so I went into my closet and pulled out my Play-Doh. It's actually her Play-Doh, but my Play-Doh, and got the same color. And so while she was doing it, I was doing the same. So there's all sorts of things you can do. I read bedtime stories to a couple of my grandkids, which I could have done a year ago, but this is what it taught us to do.
Right. What did you make out of Play-Doh?
We were just making little balls and putting them in
It's fun.
in a container. This was not advanced Play-Doh. But it was fun. So.
Well, I think you've done a bang-up job keeping us informed and safe, and that's another reason why I'm proud to be a Northbrook resident. So thank you so much for all your efforts.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I guess my saying is be safe. The other is Northbrook strong, and I think we are.
We are, absolutely. For the latest Village of Northbrook news, visit www.northbrook.il.us. While there, check out the COVID-19 community outreach page or call 847-664-4010 for a list of organizations that help support or are seeking support for those in need. Next time on Another Day in Pandemic Paradise, I'll be talking to Jeff the Mac Mentor Horwitz, who helps people understand and enjoy using their Apple technology.
What I have done as a result of the virus is I've really tried to push out ideas for my clients on things that they could be doing.
In the meantime, be safe, be smart, and be well.